I'm Cadet Alex Bornett. I'm a senior at West Point. I'm advised by Colonel Mike Powell, and today we'll be presenting on confidence-based skip lot sampling. So the problem background, we're looking at the Lake City Army Ammunition Plant. So they produce small arms ammunition for the Army and at the rate of millions of rounds per day, up to billions of rounds a year. And when we look at that, there's a high history of really good lots being produced. They basically never have bad lots. They rarely have failures, but despite this, they still sample from every single lot in production for a wide variety of things from waterproofing to accuracy. And so the question really is are we testing too excessively just to have some level of belief that we're having more safety? And so when we look at this, we want to look at what are the other options. So there's this idea of skip lot testing. And we're going to look at the status quo for skip lot testing. And what happens is we're going to start off in this every lot testing. So we're going to test every single lot in production until some number of consecutive lots in a row pass. And once we have that number in a row pass, we're going to enter our skip lot testing procedure, where every lot has some probability F of being tested. And within this, we're going to keep going through this process until a lot actually fails. And once a lot fails, we're going to exit skip lot testing and go back to every lot until once again we can see a history of good lots from this process, and then we're going to re-enter skip lot. Well, within skip lot testing, there's risk and then there's savings. So savings exists when we skip a lot that otherwise would have passed. And risk exists if we skip a lot that otherwise would have failed. And so overall, that's how we're evaluating skip lot versus every lot testing. But our problem is we want to know how can we implement skip lot sampling to create as much savings as possible while controlling the amount of risk that we're willing to accept. Because we don't want to accept an excess amount of risk when we talk about sending ammunition out to soldiers to use. And so the probability that a given lot is tested in skip lot sampling is currently fixed in the status quo. And our argument is to manage risk while maximizing savings, this probability should vary according to our confidence that the production, the next lot being produced, is actually below this accepted non-conforming rate. So how bad of a lot are we allowed to pass? And so our method, what we're doing is we're using a Bayesian estimation based on the history of lots up until this point that we've seen to predict what is the true non-conforming rate for the next lot in production and what is the distribution of that probability. And what we're saying is the lot at the top is a really good lot. The true non-conforming rate is far below the accepted non-conforming rate, and the odds that it's worse is really low, versus the lot at the bottom is slightly better than the accepted non-conforming rate, but the odds that it's worse is relatively high. So we probably should test the lot at the bottom, and we probably should skip the lot at the top. And we're saying is those two lots should not be evaluated with the same probability of testing as they are currently in the status quo. Despite this, there's inherent risk to sampling out of a lot. When we're talking about ammunition, it's destructive testing. So for us to draw any test, every sample has to be destroyed. To shoot a round, to test waterproofing, you can no longer use those rounds. And so we can't test every single round in production. We have to test a subset, so there's inherent risk. So based on the lot non-conforming rate, there's some probability that we accept the lot, whether we test it or not. It already exists. And then there's this scenario-based risk that we're adding by basically having this ability to skip lots, where it's a multiplication of what is the odd, what's the probability that we're predicting that the lot is worse than the accepted non-conforming rate, times the probability that that lot would be accepted if it was tested, right? So when we look at this, we have this idea of total risk that we're going to allow the customer to have the opportunity to set, and it's going to come in basically two forms. There's the risk that we skip a bad lot, and then there's also the risk we pass a bad lot just because we didn't see the bad rounds in production. And so that risk, there's basically three parts. There's the probability that it passes the test despite the fact that it's a bad lot, which we know. There's the probability that it's a bad lot, which we're estimating using our process. And then there's the probability that we don't test it. And that's being solved for with every single new lot to keep it under some risk level. And when we're producing our results, we're producing these OC curves. And so what this is what is the average probability of acceptance at all true non-conforming rates that we're looking at. And when we're interpreting these OC curves, this first bit, when the lots are really good, our SKSP, or our skip lot testing methods, are going to reduce the average sample number. We're going to skip a lot when the lots are really good, and we're going to have a lot of savings. Then we have this method where we're getting close to the lots being bad, And our method is going to accept more good lots than if we tested every lot, because we're going to skip some of them that may have otherwise been thrown out if they were to be tested. And then once we cross this barrier, our method is actually going to accept fewer bad lots than the status quo right now. So the current status quo is going to accept slightly more bad lots. And then the skip lot testings are going to converge to every lot once the lots get bad, because basically they're too bad. We're going to start going back to every lot testing like we talked about in the beginning. And so we wanted to look at this across different true non-conforming rate profiles. And so the first one is this the best case scenario. All the lots in production are always good. There's never a bad lot. Is this realistic? No, but it is the best case scenario. And if we look at it, the numbers on this scenario, we're basically able to see we have no increased risk and we have unbelievable amounts of savings. And in this scenario, the current status quo SKSB2 clearly beats us. They're going to save more with no increased risk. But our argument is this isn't really a realistic thing for us to look at for the true non-conforming rates. So then we looked at what if the mean of all the lots is also really good, but there's a lot of noise. So some of the lots are really good, some of the lots are really bad, but they average out to being good lots as a whole. And when we look at the OC curve for that, we see that both skip lot testing procedures do super poorly, because these super random bad lots can't be accounted for in skip lot testing procedure, either in our method, when we're estimating based on the history of lots, or in the method where every lot has some probability of being skipped. And we see that in the results. We have a ton of savings when the lots are good, but when the lots are bad, we basically miss all of them, right? This is a bad case scenario. And then finally, we wanted to look at another profile where it's getting progressively worse and then progressively better over time to see how we deal with that. And when we look at this, it's a little hard to see, but before the lots get bad, we are saving more than every lot sampling. And once the lots actually do get bad, we have less risk than SKSB2. So when we look at the results, we're able to significantly reduce the average sample number by about 23%, with only taking on 3% risk. But when you look at the actual value, we're going from 16.24% to 16.7%. So what does that mean? What are the next steps? Basically, what it comes down to is that there is no perfect method. There's not one testing procedure that's perfect. But testing every single lot in production probably isn't the best way to go either. So what do we want to look at? We want to look at what is the TNCR profile for lots currently being produced. For the long history of lots, what does it actually look like? So we're able to find the optimal skip lot testing procedure to match that TNCR profile. And then going forward, we want to, once we have that determined, we want to look into implementing the best skip lot testing practice on some tests that have some variance in risk. So the one we're currently looking at is waterproofing, because if rounds aren't perfectly waterproof, people aren't going to die. But there are other tests where the risk tolerance is super low, and so that's what we're currently looking at. I think we have time for any questions.
We've got time for a question.
Frank from IDA, thanks for the talk. I was wondering, you have a 23% for a 3% increase in problems. Like, what is the cost savings of, like, how much do people usually spend? Because if it's 3% in the field, that's still a lot of risk for the people who are out there, right?
Yeah, so there definitely is increased risk with 3%. And that's why we're trying to look at specific tests, like a test where increasing the risk for 3% isn't going to lead to catastrophic events on the backside. And so there's a lot of experts in the field that are advising us on what tests this would actually be able to be implemented in. Because while I do agree that 3% risk in terms of like accuracy is something we really don't want to see, but 3% risk in terms of like the rounds are no longer waterproof may not have detrimental impacts to soldiers down the road. So while 3% could be a lot in some aspects of the round production, we want to specifically implement skip lot testing in areas where the increased risk doesn't have detrimental effects.
Cool. Thanks again, Alex.
Thank you.